Hello, I'm Chase Baugh, and I'm an IB Sophomore at Westwood High School. I want to thank you for taking an interest in my personal project and deciding to watch this video at this place in time. Time seems to be a concept that will come up a lot in my project. But I want to encourage you to donate to Feeding America using the link in the description. They help combat hunger in America, and it's really sad how hunger has skyrocketed during the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you would just throw a few dollars their way using that link, that'd be great. So I want to thank my family for supporting me both morally and fiscally during this project. I want to thank my advisor, Mr. Abel, for helping me sort of flesh out ideas and get this project done. I want to thank the director of personal projects at Westwood, Miss Dooley. I want to thank all my teachers at Westwood because they're pretty great. They're awesome people. And without further ado, here's my personal project. 30 minutes of me rambling about history. How bad could it go?
All of the energy in the universe came from one point, the singularity, everything. The matter that makes you, your favorite comedian, and the politician you despise the most all came from one place. And that's not even to mention literally every single other thing ever. All of your ancestors, all celestial objects, and all things that have been and will ever be all come from one singular point in space that exploded 13.7 billion years ago. This point not only expanded what we call the universe, but that explosion kicked off the start of time. And that isn't even the most insane part, and then expanded at an extremely fast rate. This ball of violently hot energy and matter expanded from being insanely, almost incomprehensibly small, to the size of a sports ball in an insanely small fraction of a second. Then, in these terribly strange first microseconds of the universe, the first subatomic particles started to form and create protons and neutrons, and the force of gravity started weighing on the objects inside of the universe. Then, 3 minutes after the Big Bang occurred, the universe began to cool down a little bit to, let me just check my notes here. 300 million degrees Celsius. That's right, don't worry, it's only 300 million degrees Celsius. But it's still not cool enough to form atoms. Hydrogen and helium are finally able to form 700,000 years after the Big Bang. So let's recap. First, nothing, then within a tiny fraction of a second, an extremely hot basketball of energy soup universe, and finally 700,000 years later, some gas. 700,000 years sounds like a long time, but the first stars and galaxies were not able to form until 1 billion years after the Big Bang. Gravity brings gas closer and closer until eventually it collapses in on itself, and voila, you have a big, hot nuclear glob of energy, aka a star. When stars die, they create heavier elements, and then they get pushed into the universe. Our own solar system was created from a big cloud of elements around 4.5 billion years ago. Most of it formed the sun, and all of the other leftover materials formed everything else in the solar system. Our Earth then formed by these leftover materials that began to accumulate over time thanks to gravity, almost like a big rocky snowball rolling down a hill. The moon most likely formed when another planet-like object crashed into the Earth. The remains of this object stuck around Earth and gradually accumulated into the moon. The debate over where Earth's water came from is still going, but recent evidence shows that it appeared very early in the planet's lifetime, meaning it was either bombarded by asteroids with water or it just had water on it already. Whatever the case, carbon dioxide from the planet began to form an atmosphere, one mostly of heavier gases such as methane and ammonia. Then, because of the formation of this atmosphere, rains began to fall and naturally made their way to the lowest points, creating the oceans. You think the world is crazy now? Just imagine being on the coast looking out over the ocean only to see an insane drop-off. The origin of life is very complicated and is still uncertain as scientists continue to research and refine their theories. The fact that as humans we have only recently in the past 100 years been able to unravel the complex processes of life means that we still have very far to go in our research. So the question presents itself. How do you go from no life to life, from nothing to something? Scientists have found the earliest evidence of life are in fossils dated from around 3.5 to 3.8 billion years ago. However, these fossils show microorganisms, and the earliest forms of life were likely to be simpler than that. The atmosphere of the early Earth was most certainly different from that of it now. The current composition has lots of oxygen, however the earlier one was filled with heavier gases and had lots of the hydrogen needed for life. Then, scientists argue that the Earth at this point had quite a bit of ultraviolet light and lightning storms. Experiments have proved that this environment can produce organic compounds, such as the amino acids needed for life. Now, one of the most important things about life is the ability to reproduce. These early life forms somehow found a way to replicate. The reason I say somehow is because the scientists are still debating how, and the early life didn't exactly just leave a note, huh? And once they were able to do that, they then adapted and evolved due to natural selection. Basically, all life is the way it is because every single species is playing a game show called Adapt or Die. In this game, organisms have to develop traits that are advantageous to their survival and allow them to reproduce. If not, then they are chucked into the ether to be forgotten forever. But eventually, the very early life forms I was talking about split into 3 domains around 2.7 billion years ago: Archaea, Bacteria, and Eukaryotia. And after a few mass extinction events, sorry dinos, eventually we came about. All humans are under the genus Homo, which includes mainly Homo sapiens as well as other extinct species of humans. So whenever you've had a bad day and are a bit down, just give yourself a pat on the back, knowing that you beat out the other humans. Now, the first humans looked very different from you and I, mainly in the shape of their face and brain size, but being able to walk upright is one of the fundamental definitions for what makes a human. So they were able to do at least that. There were 3 groups that started to appear in Africa around 2.8 to 2 million years ago. These are Homo habilis, Homo rudolfensis, and Homo erectus. Homo habilis appeared around 2 million years ago, and Homo rudolfensis had brains larger than Homo habilis. Now, Homo erectus is where we start cooking with fire. Literally, they were the ones that started to learn how to use fire. They started popping up around 1.8 million years ago and survived for around 1 million years, and eventually led to us. Now, all 3 of the peoples I just mentioned were able to both make and use stone tools to aid in their hunting, gathering, and fishing. However, it was the Homo erectus that started making some slightly more complex tools, and like I mentioned before, probably began to use fire. This was probably from moving into colder environments that needed more of the heat. Then, a little bit after 1.8 million years ago, Homo erectus migrated out of Africa and were able to establish populations in Asia and Europe while maintaining their population in Africa. Over that time, their brain size continued to grow. Homo erectus also had a large level of physical variation, which is something that we see as well with modern humans. Now, before we get into modern humans, we have to first talk about archaic humans, which had populations all over Afro-Eurasia and include the Neanderthals and Denisovans, and were alive over 100,000 years ago. Homo neanderthalensis, better known as Neanderthals, are kind of like humanity's weird cousin. They lived from around 150,000 years ago to 39,000 years ago. So we're getting into some pretty recent times when you consider the universe is 13.7 billion years old. They started to bury their dead, they used stone tools, they were adapted to cold climates, and they also had a few sexy times with modern humans before they went extinct, meaning everyone has at least some Neanderthal DNA in them. That's right, you Neanderthals. Denisovans are people that probably lived around Siberia 50,000 years ago. Everything that we know about them comes from the analysis of 2 teeth and a finger bone. They are different from Neanderthals, and that's about all you need to know. Finally, modern Homo sapiens first appeared in Africa somewhere around 150,000 to 200,000 years ago, but there are some fossils from as far back as 300,000 years ago. What makes these people closer to you than a Neanderthal is the skull. These people then left Africa somewhere around 200,000 years ago and were able to reach India and China around 70,000 years ago, Australia 40,000 years ago, and Europe 45,000 years ago, and then eventually the Americas through the Beringia land bridge. Now, you may find it strange that modern humans waited quite a while after leaving Africa to enter Europe. Well, it wasn't because the customs line was long, it was because Europe is quite far north, and ice ages aren't exactly where you want to be when there's an ice age. So that's the long history of why you aren't just another animal and are instead a human capable of complex thought. Currently, the year is 2021. 2021 what, you may ask? Well, 2021 trips around the sun since Jesus was born. Wait, why is the calendar defined by a Christian date? Christians only account for 2 out of the 7 billion people. Well, I can't answer that easily, but I can give you an alternative. The human era, or the Holocene calendar. Here's how it works. You take the current year, you slap on 10,000, bam, you now have the year 12,021 HE. No BC or AD or BCE or CE, just HE, the human era. The start date for this calendar then lines up not with a religious occurrence, but with a historical one. You see, 12,000 years ago was when the Neolithic Revolution was just starting, so this year system puts our lives in a context with our history. Well, wait, what's the Neolithic Revolution then? Well, it was the period in our history when the majority of humans transitioned from being mostly nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled farmers. That is, to put it very simply, and even though it's called a revolution, it happened quite slowly. It took a while to domesticate plants and animals, and groups of people only adopted farming if it provided some benefit to them. The main advantage of farming was that it required much less land to support people than hunting and gathering. The problem with it is that it was much more laborious, and farmers for a long time actually had worse diets than hunter-gatherers. And also, the keeping of large amounts of animals in close contact with humans made it way easier for disease to spread. Thanks, bats. Anyway, this agriculture occurred in a few main areas, but the most important ones to know are the Indus River Valley, Mesopotamia, China, and Mesoamerica. But let's put the occasional famines aside for now. So, you can produce a lot more food using a lot less land. What does that lead to? Well, now you have people to do things that aren't farming or hunting or gathering. This is where we see specialization take off. And this is what makes everything complex. You now have extra food, and because of that, you have extra people. And because of that, you need people to guard your food, a military, from other people who want your food. And you need a place to sell your food, markets. Eventually, because of the specialization, you have people making art, and you have people who are in charge of the government to keep order, and you have people who manage the religion that inevitably rises. Now, you have a civilization. World Book defines a civilization as a society or culture that has a complex socio-political and economic institutions. Now, one of the important parts of being able to have a civilization is communication. Humans communicate through language, and humans are the only animals to use spoken language. And we have no idea when language first developed. But another important aspect of communication is writing, the ability to record something for later use. We do know something about this. One of the earliest written languages we have found was cuneiform in Mesopotamia and some early writing in China. Writing is pretty important in keeping the traditions and information of civilizations going. And humans have been making fun of each other and saying ridiculous things in writing for quite some time. But it mostly started as a way for the proto-IRSs of the world to keep track of taxes. So, like I said, 12,000 years or so since the start of the transition towards settled farming, lots of food, lots of people, civilizations, religion, culture, yada, yada, yada. Well, what is this culture? What is this religion you speak of? What does everyone do during those 12,000 years? Well, culture is essentially a way of life, and that includes all art, invention, values, beliefs, societal structures, and a lot more. Culture is not inherited by birth, but is rather something you learn as you grow up. There can be international and national culture as well as more local culture and subcultures. If you are born and raised in New York City, then you've got the New York culture and probably enjoy falling to your knees and yelling, "De Blasio!" every time you are even minorly inconvenienced. If you enjoy yogurt and probiotics and are part of a fan group for those foods, then you may be part of the microbial culture subculture. See what I did there? Yeah. Oh God, it's the joke police! You'll never take me along! Oftentimes, religion can define culture. Now, what's religion? Well, that's hard to define, but other people have tried to do this so that you and I don't have to think as hard. World Book defines it as, for many people, religion is an organized system of beliefs, rituals, acts and ceremonies, personal practices, and worship directed towards a supreme power or deity, God. For others, religion involves a number of gods or deities. Now, there are no definitive origins of religion, but we do have some theories. The very earliest religions may have been a way to control a population, and religion also may have been a way to find some method in the madness and explain the unexplainable. Now, initially people may have wanted to do this to help bring about some morals, such as burning in hell and eternal damnation is a pretty good way to convince someone not to commit murder. Religion is pretty important in human history, so we might as well cover all the bases and go into our next segment, which will be called Chases, Religions, Summarization, Speedrun. Please excuse me if my explanation feels rushed. Okay, first up, the Abrahamic religions. Judaism, go. Abraham moves to Canaan, and his grandson Jacob has 12 kids. Those 12 kids become the leaders of the 12 tribes of Israel, and some of those go to Egypt and become slaves. Then God sends Moses, and he liberates them, leads them, and gets a list of laws from God. These are the 10 Commandments. Judaism was probably the first religion to develop monotheism. Then another religion built on top of it, and that's Christianity, and it's all about Jesus, aka Christ. He goes around and does a bunch of miracles and inspires people, and also says that he's the son of God. And the Romans are like, no, that's bad. So the Romans nail his limbs to a cross and he dies. But wait, he comes back 3 days later and ascends to heaven. And now everyone paints eggs for some reason. Christians believe that he died for everyone's sins and that you must do good like Jesus, except for people disagree on how to do that good, what different things in the Bible mean, and about other things in general. So there are many denominations. The next one is related to Judaism, except for the fact that they believe that they descend from a different son of Abraham, and that religion is Islam. Go. Okay, this one is all about the Prophet Muhammad. Basically, Muhammad was meditating when the angel Gabriel visited him with revelations about Allah, who is the only God. Muhammad then went into Mecca and preached this. He gained a small following, but eventually he was kicked out and he migrated to Medina. Islam has 5 pillars: faith, prayer, charity, fasting, and the Hajj, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca that every Muslim is required to do at least once in their life. Just like every group of people, the Muslims have their disagreements, and so Islam is primarily separated into the Sunnis and the Shias. The next religion, which has a complicated history with Islam, is Hinduism. Go. Hinduism has a wide range of beliefs and many deities, but it's mostly practiced on the Indian subcontinent and is based on sacred writings and scriptures. There are long, storied epics of heroes and their struggles, and the tales of many gods and goddesses. Then, Hinduism's next-door neighbor is Buddhism. Go. Buddhism is all about taking refuge in the 3 refuges, or 3 jewels, which are the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha means enlightened one and was the first person to have transcended life and death. The Dharma are his teachings about a cycle of rebirth after death and how your actions in life are considered when you are being born in the next one. And the Sangha is the community of ordained monks. Meditation is also very important to Buddhists. Alright, the next one is less of a religion and more of a set of ideas, but Confucianism, go! Confucianism is a belief system that is all about morals. Respect for ancestors is crucial in Confucianism, and so is respect for authority. It has played a large role in Chinese history and still has impact in Chinese society. Another part of religion is indigenous religion. Finally, there are people that follow indigenous religions, such as the people in the Americas, in Africa, in Asia, and in Oceania. Finally, at the very end, is people that saw all of the options above and decided to rage against the machine instead. Irreligion. Irreligion consists of people who are not religious or reject religion. Some people simply identify as non-religious, however, others consider themselves to be agnostics or atheists. Agnosticism is the belief that questions such as, is there a God, are impossible to answer, and therefore we can never truly know whether there is or is not a God. Atheists believe that there is no God whatsoever, like no chance. And with that, the religion roundup is complete. Okay, so those different cultures and religions, right? Well, basically, history is a lot of interactions between different cultures and religions and how people respond. It's usually violence. Humans just really frickin' love violence. So one of the ways that these cultures interacted was through the Silk Sea and sand roads from the 1st century BCE to the 15th century. These roads connected most of the major parts of Afro-Eurasia and started a large exchange of goods, ideas, and people. So this is all to preface where we will start off our summary of modern world history. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue and started several centuries of genocide, exploitation, and imperialism. The Columbian Exchange then followed, and Europeans got lots of new crops, and the indigenous peoples got deadly diseases that killed in the millions. European countries then rushed in to claim land, largely Spain, France, and England. However, some others tried to get in there as well. Then they colonized said land, enslaved many of the people already living there, and exploited them for profit. Then they began to want more people to exploit, so they shipped millions over from Africa in horrifying conditions and subjected them to some of the most extreme torture known to man. This extortion then brought back profits to the European countries. Meanwhile, Europe had just hit the Protestant Reformation, the Renaissance, and scientific revolution recently, and all of this new blood capital from the Americas probably helped kickstart the Industrial Revolution as well. Right around this time, the Enlightenment occurred, and everyone started to care about, independence and liberty. Well, not for everyone, just the Europeans. Well, not all the Europeans, just the male Europeans. Well, not all the male Europeans, just the landowning male Europeans. Ah, yes, liberty. So America promptly kicked out the British over a game of chess, liberty chess, if you will, where Britain had gotten so angry it flipped the board and told the traitorous Yanks to just sit down and drink their tea. And the Americans told the stuffy Tories to get their royal tyrannous butts off of our continent. France then saw this exchange, helped the Americans win, and then their own people were like, wait, I can do that, and tried and failed, because Napoleon kind of put it down violently. But at least they popularized human rights a bit, so they got to use the guillotine a lot. After that, while Spain was looking the other way, because of Napoleon, a whole bunch of Latin American nations snuck out. Then, Europe was too busy burning fossil fuels with the Industrial Revolution and developing capitalism. I'm sure those won't come back to bite us. Japan even jumped on board too with the Industrial Revolution pretty early on, but they also jumped in on the imperialism. Because of the Industrial Revolution, people were in mass migration into cities and breathing in smoke, and children were dying in mines, and rivers were getting polluted. All the while, the people who ran the factories got rich. So Karl Marx and Frederick Engels were like, hey, we've got this spicy new thing called socialism and communism. So what if the workers controlled the factories and everyone was equal? And then because of this, the workers formed unions and political parties and won better hours and better conditions, better pay, and so much more. Then the Russians got so serious about this that they actually did it. While this was happening in the late 19th century, the European leaders were too busy scrambling for Africa and trying to extort, coerce, and conquer Africa in an attempt to make some more money and get more power to compete with other European states. They had also gone and taken other parts of the world for themselves, like Oceania, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. Imperialism. Also in the 19th century, the United States had a big, bloody war about slavery, and the Union managed to crush the Confederacy, and all the slaves were emancipated. Except there was no economic relief, so black communities around the nation today still face many inequalities, as they do not have nearly as much generational wealth as white people do. So even though they didn't take some steps towards fixing the situation economically, the nation went through Reconstruction, and sadly groups like the KKK were able to gain power, kill innocent people, and get away with it. The country and the world then marched on for the rest of the century, facing issues of the day such as toxic monopolies and wars against foreign nations. And now we're in the 20th century, but we're not quite at the internet and Bill Clinton yet.
NAFTA.
Then the world fights World War I because of a bunch of alliances that just really are too boring to list off. The Triple Entente wins, and Germany has to give away a bunch of land and gets really pissed off. And after this, countries like the US are doing great because women won their right to vote. And the stock markets are doing great because of the advent of credit and consumerism. But it doesn't last forever, and eventually everything crashes and pushes us into the Great Depression. So eventually FDR and the New Deal Democrats sweep into power and pass legislation as part of a New Deal for workers to get back to work and the economy up and running again. So back in Europe, Germany is still pretty pissed off about the whole World War I thing, and Hitler, who is probably still pretty pissed off about the whole being rejected from art school thing, serves Germany a big bowl of fascism soup, and Germany gobbles it up. And Italy does the same, and then they invade a few countries, and Japan gets in on the action, and then FDR, Churchill, and Stalin lead their countries to victory, stomping out fascism and liberating Europe and the Pacific. Millions of both soldiers and civilians died fighting World War II, and the Nazis systematically killed 6 million people simply for being Jewish. After the war, the United Nations is set up as a way to keep peace and encourage international cooperation. But wait, the United States and the Soviet Union promptly went, no thank you, and started building up large amounts of hot death balls to throw at each other if they ever got angry enough to do it. And they fight a lot of proxy wars as well in places like Korea and Vietnam, is willing to try to one-up each other each in like technological advancements like space exploration. There was also the issue of China, now communist and led by Mao Zedong. Mao wanted China to industrialize quickly, and also to rewrite Chinese culture and history so that it seemed cooler and like reflected him better. After his death, just like after Stalin's death in the Soviet Union, the leadership realizes that like those guys were kind of jerks and maybe shouldn't be worshipped like gods. Meanwhile, the United States finally decided to do something about racism and to confront the horrific Jim Crow laws in the South and many other places that legalized discrimination, segregation, and made it so difficultly, insanely hard to vote. Congress passed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act after the Civil Rights Movement. But racism, discrimination, and racially motivated police brutality still persist into today, sadly. But in a win for historically oppressed peoples, the colonizers of the 19th century were finally kicked out of power in their colonial states after the people there wanted some of that sweet, sweet independence and self-determination for themselves. Meanwhile, to catch up a bit on that Cold War that could annihilate the world at any moment, Mikhail Gorbachev took over as leader of the Soviet Union in the 80s and started to be like super chill about expanding democracy and openness in the country. However, in this process of making the Soviet Union freer, and by extension cooler, the country collapsed and we were left with many different independent states. The 20th century is also the advent of computers starting to become available to the public and a massive boost in technology. So the 20th century ends off great. The economy's booming, the internet's becoming popular, democracies are taking hold, and you're listening to your favorite Michael Jackson song. What could go wrong? Well, some terrorists under the leadership of Osama bin Laden crashed planes in the World Trade Center towers and the Pentagon on September 11, 2001. These attacks resulted in the death of 3,000 people, and as a result, the United States launched a war on terror and invaded Afghanistan to root out al-Qaeda. Then the U.S. started another war in Iraq in 2008 that is controversial. The basis for the controversy is that the United States lied about intelligence showing that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and national defense officials and politicians like Dick Cheney claimed that the United States needed to invade Iraq and topple Saddam Hussein to prevent him from using these non-existent WMDs. This is just one of the political controversies of the 2000s. Then, because it seems we cannot live in a time without crisis, the world went into recession in 2008 and took forever to get out of it. Partially because of said recession, Barack Obama swept in 2008, becoming the first black president and promising hope and change and an end to partisan politics. Spoiler alert, he wasn't able to do it and the politics got even more partisan. And then in the 2010s, we see a large wave of movements around the globe as people organize for a better world. The Arab Spring and mass protests for democracy in the Middle East happen and then are cracked down on and they go deeper into authoritarianism. The Black Lives Matter movement starts marching for an end to police brutality and eventually leads to a national race reckoning in 2020 that is still continuing. The LGBTQ rights movement gains a major victory in 2015 in a Supreme Court case that legalized same-sex marriage nationwide in the United States. We also see politics become more extreme in the late 2010s with people like Donald Trump winning on anti-immigration and far-right platforms, and the UK voting to leave the EU, both of those occurring in 2016. The last 4 years have been marked by extreme divisions in not only the country, but also the world. Then in 2020, the world just kind of gets like, what's the term I'm looking for? Suplexed by COVID-19. In the close future, humanity has many, many, many problems on many different levels affecting many different people. On one level, you have social issues. Like in the past 5 years, we have witnessed the threat of extremism in U.S. politics in the 2016 and 2020 elections. Many things fueled this flame, but one of them was social media and the way that it allows rampant misinformation because of its profit model. Social media companies are not interested in connecting you with your friends or helping your god-awful memes reach the general public. They're interested in making money. And those things I described previously are just means to an end. So, what they end up doing is using algorithms to serve you posts and accounts that they think you will like in an attempt to keep you on their service longer and to make more money off of you from ads. From this, they basically may shove you into an echo chamber that gradually radicalizes you. This also helps hate groups organize and leads to the devastating events like the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally in 2017 and the storming of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. This is just one of the social problems. You also have the backsliding of democracy and the threat of toxic nationalism in places like Eastern Europe, Latin America, and South Asia. While these problems are devastating, this isn't even one of the worst things we are facing at the moment. If we don't seriously divest from fossil fuels and cut emissions by a lot within the next decade, then the global greenhouse effect will continue to ramp up and we will face the wrath of global warming and climate change. You think summer is bad now? Just wait until the sea levels have risen and droughts are so bad that there isn't anything to drink anymore. However, international tensions have been heating up lately, so we may not have to face climate change if we are annihilated by weapons of mass destruction, turning the world into a field of toxic sludge. Nuclear annihilation. Always a terrifying thing to think about. Oh, at all of these crises, isn't even to mention the current ongoing worldwide pandemic. Like, the world is screwed, humanity's screwed. Like, why even try? Well, even in a world so devastated and battered as this one, there will always be hope. There are people willing to make the changes that we need to see to come together as a society and fix our issues. It's happened before and it'll happen again. And from an American perspective, leaders will rise to fulfill the nation's founding promises of equality and freedom. Lincoln brought the Union together. FDR brought us out of a depression and used the hope and determination of an entire nation to crush fascism. It may take a while, but so long as there are people determined to, we will solve our problems and venture into the future. We will act on our natural instincts of exploration and set out to know the unknowable. We will explore our oceans and discover more about our Earth. We will explore the vast riches of science and what benefits it can bring to all. We will venture into the stars to discover the universe's secrets and become an interplanetary species. We will venture onwards, remembering our evolutionary beginnings and our early selves. We will do it to remember those who came before us, to inspire one day those that will come after. But most importantly, we will do it together. We will explore the stars and the mysteries of the unknown together for the benefit of all. You live in this world as one of 7 billion people. In the grand scheme of things, you are so small and insignificant, just a blip on the mighty disk of time. However, at the same time, your life has so much meaning that it's truly insane. You matter to someone, to friends, to family. You love and care for people, and others love and care for you. Your life is one that is so unique yet standard at the same time. Your experiences are your own. No one else owns them. And at the same time, every other human being is going through the same things, just in different ways. The future of our species may be one that seems distant and vague to many. Visions of a chrome-plated world out of the pages of science fiction, or that of a planet left rotted to death, still burning with the radiation of 1,000 bombs, or many, many other futures. What is certain is that for our species to endure, we will have the same traits as our ancestors past. People in thousands of years will still feel emotion. They will feel happiness. They will feel anger. They will feel pain. But what we can understand the most is that they will feel love. The same love as the people of generations living today feel. The same love as someone from ancient Sumer. The same love that people have felt in anger and strife and war. And the same love that triumphed over our demons and brings peace and tranquility and justice. The same love that encourages us to do better. The love that makes us temporarily cast away our greed and our hatred so that we can pass on that love to the generations to come.
There it is. There's my personal project. I want to thank you for sitting through it. I hope you enjoyed it, because I definitely enjoyed making it. There were definitely times where I was stressed out. Lots of times where I was stressed out, correction. There were definitely times where I felt like I wasn't going to be able to make it come together, like I'd fail at some point or I wouldn't have it done. But since you're watching that means I obviously did it somehow. So I just want to thank you again. If you have any comments, concerns, if you liked a certain part or something like that, or even if you thought I could do something better, I want to improve. So please send me a line on Instagram at my username, which is _cybersamurai_. Yet again, if you have some spare money lying around or you want to do something for a good cause, go ahead and donate using the link in the description to Feeding America to help end hunger in America. And I have one ask left. At the very end, I have one last thing to ask you, and that's that could you please complete a feedback survey in the description that you'd find. It would really help me get a good idea on how well I did with this project, and that's it. I'm done. Thank you, and if you see me around, say hi.